Good evening, everybody. Man, it is beautiful out today. And welcome back. Glad to have you. And welcome to picking back up those infographic skills that we were working on in the previous video. In the last video, it was a big old breakdown of sort of stylistically matching all kinds of different things for your infographic, talking through text layouts, how to be able to do different text treatments. And this evening, what I wanted to do with you guys is take it back to basics. So I have got 3 different examples here tonight that I'm going to be working through in this video. And I believe that these examples here, these 3 examples, are going to give us a terrain to be able to talk about different things when it comes to illustrating for graphics or illustrating for graphic design and the story that we are telling. Now, what I've got here doesn't look all that cool at the moment, but hopefully when we get done with this, I've got some good groundwork that I've gone ahead and created here. So this is the pot. Now, a lot of you guys are creating projects. Oops, I dropped it in. Are creating projects where you're explaining maybe a process or the way that you go through and do something. Now, I wanted to create some graphic design elements. Yep. Center. 3 different graphic design elements that are showing you how you can take something like the pot and through every stage of the illustration, the font, the text usage, reinforce the idea, the narrative, the story that you're telling here with your graphic designs and with your illustrations, as well as your font treatment, your text box treatment, as well as the supporting body text, which I'll add in a little bit here. But each one is very different. Now, the one on the left-hand side, the pot, number 1 over here with the brown background, this has got more of a, you could say, old Western, 1920s, just sort of turn of the century type of font. It's sort of old-timey looking. And to be able to support that old-timey look, I am creating my box around my piece in a style that matches that same kind of feel and that same type of era. There's motifs that exist during this period, and I'm going to continue to elaborate and embellish on this one throughout this video, so that you guys can see how we can really pull that styling together and make it look really, really nice. Now, the pot itself is pretty plain looking right now. There's nothing too interesting going on with it other than I've made a stylized choice here, which you guys are more than welcome to do, is to stylize these illustrations. Up until this point in all the other videos, I've been going through and really hammering home to you guys the importance of good lighting and shadows and shading and all that stuff. And this is the project where we get to, now that we're aware of those rules, we get to turn around and start breaking them a little bit and start making intentional design decisions that help to lend themselves to the overall aesthetic of the piece. Some of you guys are already doing this, not everybody. So I hope that this video is enlightening for you to start thinking about these types of things. Right now, within this first one, before I move on to the other 2, the pot illustration is in no way, shape, or form related to the font treatment that I have going on up here. This is something that's going to be important for you guys as you create your logos within these infographics, is figuring out a way to be able to tie the aesthetic fully together. I do not want to see you at the very end just dropping in some plain untreated text. Even with this logo up here, I've shrunk the V, I've got the pot, which is opened up a little bit more, and there's a little bit of treatment that's going on with it. But as we start to move forward, I'm going to embellish this text quite a bit more to really make it stand out and fit that sort of early era look and style that I'm going for here. I'm also being very cautious within my spacing, right? So I want to make sure that things are cleanly spaced. The gutter space on either side, give your projects, or give your illustrations, give your text Give what you're working with room to be able to breathe within this project. I've talked a lot about how important white space is within this assignment. So you can see even with the way that I'm laying out these three on this 20 by 20 pad, I've got just about the same. If I finalize this and actually like share it, I'll make sure that the spacing is even on each side, that there's plenty of breathability within this graphic already that's making it look really, really clean. So I need to figure out a way, my design problem for this one on the left-hand side, each one of these is a different design problem and solution that'll have a different style and rendering treatment that happens with it. And that's why I wanted to show this to you guys, how we can take the same subject, the pot, and make it look and feel completely different with the font choices and the rendering styles that we're choosing to really, get an aesthetic choice and through those aesthetic choices, a story that we're telling about this product out to our audience. Now, the pot here on the left-hand side, you can see that the text treatment, the font already comes pre-wired with this outline, this little bit of a clear drop shadow with a thin stroke going on around it. And that's something that I want to try to infuse within my illustration as well. So I want to be able to link with the visual elements that are going on within the font to my illustrations so that it feels extremely connected. And this is how you get to those truly radical and professional level projects. So what can we learn from looking at this font, right? We've got a little bit of bend to it. We've got some downward pointed tapering edges that are happening here. We've got some thick areas. We've also, within the T, we've got a thicker, broader area that becomes thinner as we move up to the top of it, right, through this bridge. And same thing is happening with this O. So the more that I can infuse this sort of thick and thin kind of look into this right now very rudimentary pot design, if I can do it with my shading, if I can do it with the line work that I'm going to put on it, the better I can start to join all of these pieces together. It's going to be cool. This is a really good video, and I'm glad you guys are here to be able to watch this one. So the next one over in the middle, we've got a very different font choice and treatment, and more of a handwritten. It almost looks like a Sharpie up here on our whiteboard marker within the pot also has got almost a papyrus thing going on with it, with those crinkled edges that are happening, but it's still got, I think, some strong letter forms. So there's a couple subtle things that I'm doing with this base illustration already to help tie everything together. I've got my pot itself kicked over on the side, and it is mirroring the same shape as the O. So if you look at the O here, and then we look at the shape of the pot, there's a relationship going on between the two. The second spot, with even this very, very base illustration, I'm going to add more stuff to all these pots as we continue on this evening, is the handle. So the handle is actually a very, very similar shape to what we see happening within the T. It's just flipped upside down. So there is some shape relationship that I'm creating between the two of these. I've also got rounded edges, rounded corners that are going on within each one of these letter forms. And so that's why my outer border here is more rounded, just so that it feels a little bit more modern. And there's a lot of neat stuff that I can still do as I'm starting to render this, especially this one I kind of want to be the textured one. This one I want to be the old-timey one with all the embellishments and extra wingdings attached to them. And then the final one, I wanted this one to be super modern and clean, right? So if you go into a shopping mall and you see a pot with this logo, you know you're going to be paying like $200 for this pot, and you're going to have to talk about it to your friends for the next 3 years to feel like you got your money's worth. So the font treatment here is ultra modern. It's a minimalist font. We don't even get the other side of the T going on here. It's one thin line that's consistent throughout the entire thing. The V is very stylized, but it also has those rounded letters. These are two different fonts, by the way, so that they feel like they match up and they align with one another. For the treatment for this one, you can see how I am not just leaving the same size as the rest of it. This one's got the lowercase. This is all uppercase, but the positioning for where that the is and the scale relationship to it changes each time. This one, it really feels like you're saying it, the pot. And then this one is it's a little bit softer. And then this one is, you know, you say it in a German accent, I suppose. But you guessed it, the same thing is happening here. So within the pot itself, I wanted to go through and really highlight the circularness of the top of the pot that matches with the P and the O. And then I've got the same letter form that's happening within the T is creating the handle of this pot. So if you guys are getting to this point in the video and you're thinking to yourself, well, how does this relate to the infographic that I'm creating right now? We've got the graphics that's relating back to the text. We've got the box treatment. So you're probably going to want to place each one of your either facts or your explanations or your timeline within something like this. Leaving them just floating in outer space can look really clean and really nice as well. But on so many modern websites, we see these types of box CSS box structures as well. And it helps to visually anchor what the viewer is looking at and seeing. So this is all about sort of taking a title, some body text, and an illustration and keeping it all together in one package to where I could create an entire infographic based on this art direction for the one on the right hand side. The same thing goes for the one on the left or the one in the middle or the one on the right. And I'm developing a set of rules that I'm going to apply to any other illustrations that I would do. So this can be applied to, say, making a tuna fish sandwich. And at some point you need to boil some eggs and, get those ready. And in your illustration for your infographic, you might have to go through and create an illustration of a pot. This is some different paths forward for that. Now, like I said, we're going to make these pots look good as we continue to move forward. We want to make them look good and stylized. I'm in a pretty good position here. I guess let's do the one on the left-hand side first. I think that's got the most interest to it. And it's going to take, while you're fresh, a little bit longer to be able to do this. So I've got my layers separated out. For right now, I'm pretty happy with the positioning of the pot itself. I think this lends itself well to a lot of flourish and interest as I continue to move forward. When I actually export this, so I'm going to jump over into Photoshop with these elements as well tonight and then reassembling them all back together. I'm going to end up pulling those pots down. I'm going to pull the fonts up so that I can still work and mess with them inside of Photoshop so that everything isn't completely flat. And yeah, so right now that I've got my general placement, I think I've got enough room for some nice body text here, some one little sub tagline if I wanted to, just a little bit of text within this one over on the left-hand side. And yeah, this one's got lots of room for text within this section as if it's like an old-timey apothecary or something like that. All right. So this is the way that I like to use Illustrator. Also, I wanted to be able to make sure that I got in here and showed you guys some of that stuff. So we already did a breakdown of what's going on within the fonts itself, and I want to see how much I can really use that font treatment within this illustration. I'm going to start off by just creating some border pieces. And those little flares that are coming off the P, that's going to inform some of the choices that I make here. So I'm holding down Shift on the keyboard while I'm using my mouse with the left click to be able to start creating some of these things. Over here, it's on a fill. I'm going to switch it over to a line. And I don't have really any of my options within this version of Illustrator. So I'm going to change my workspace and let's go to see what painting does. I don't like it. That's not the layout that I usually like to work with. Let's try that again. Essentials Classic. Yeah, that's looking like more my speed here. So we got the properties. Let's pull that out over the side. I also want my layers to show up. Those are my important ones. I don't know if any of you guys like working on artboards, but artboards are pretty cool within Illustrator. All right, so now very easily, I can see my stroke. So I'm going to increase that stroke width so that it feels a little bit more related, right? Not quite as thick as the font itself, but there's some, there is some relationship to it. And the next up is if I click on stroke within Illustrator, I get some more options within options. And this guy, the profile, this has been within Illustrator forever, and it's good for a quick fix for what it is that you're creating. And I'm just going to turn this on so that my line itself starts to taper out towards the end. And it's tapering out in the same way that my letter forms are tapering out. So instantly they feel a little bit more connected to one another. We're using the libraries. Let's close that. So I'm going to hit Control C, Control Shift V. That means I just pasted two of them. And then I'm going to go to Object, Transform, and Reflect. It reflects on the X-axis at first. So now all of a sudden I have two of these, which is really nice. And you can see that my pot is getting a little bit big here. So this is sort of why I like to create, I'm holding down Shift to be able to evenly scale. 1, 2, 3. To evenly scale, holding down Shift. And now all of a sudden, I can see that V and the pot are a little bit too high up there. So I'm going to bring them down quite a bit more. I sort of like them right in the middle. And we can see that that little bit of embellishment is already starting to add a lot to the overall design. Let's see if we can't add a little bit more here. So I'm going to hit P on my keyboard to get back into the and now let's continue to think about those particular shapes that are appearing. I don't want, oh, did I just lose everything? All right, no, I didn't. It's just hidden. Okay, we're good. So now that these are not related to one another, you can see that that is pretty darn messy looking. And I'm also missing the profile. There we go, a little bit better. So let's go in and I'm going to hit, you could hit A on your keyboard or click on the white arrow to start actually modifying these a little bit better. There we go. That's what I had in mind. And now for this swirly, make it feel a little bit more related. Yeah, so that's a cool little shape, and it should look even better. Control C, Control Shift V, and transform, reflect, right back over. Right. Let's zoom out this thing. Yeah, all right. I like that as a border piece. I think that that works pretty well. There's probably a little bit more that I can do here. So let's go in and just to really be able to finalize this thing, get one of these going in here. And I'm going to get my same width just by clicking on the eyeball clicker. I want to go into my stroke, and I'm going to change my properties on this one so it's not quite uniform, but instead, I don't like the taper. Let's have it taper, and we can reverse it that way. All right. So now I'm going to click my A, push this up just a little bit more so that it visually lines up and matches. And now let's pull this so that it fills that negative space. All right, that's a good little detail right there. Control Shift V, object, arrange, transform, reflect, hit enter. And now I'm just going to pull this over to the other side because we are working nice and even. So now I've got that little bit of a break going on between there, and you can see how nice visually that break starts to look. Now, I'm also creating something within this process, which is very similar and akin to what's going on with the font treatment itself, where it has um, the variation between the thin lines and the thick lines. So if I have a thick line here, this is actually a really good spot for me to go in and add just a little bit more detail and piping going along the side. That's what I want. Maybe I can even push that on the outside. It might be a little bit crowded there. Let's keep the spacing the same. I like it. Control-Shift-V, don't need to flip that one in any kind of way, shape, or form, and just making sure that it's nice and centered. All right, so now we're continuing to use that break pattern that we created just a moment ago. And I'm going to do something, oops. Sorry, I just want these two to line up. That'll work. And keeping that break pretty similar. So now that's starting to match our upper font in a really, really nice way. So we can do a similar treatment to what's going on with these letter forms down here, right? So we've got a nice pattern that we're starting to create. Up, over, and I got it. All right, let's do something like this. You click on the end of a pen stroke, it'll remove it, and it'll stop you from having the two handles on either side. Okay, so I like this one. It's a weird looking shape, but again, we're thinking about these in terms of how they're going to mirror. So transform and reflect. Pull it over to the other side so that the spacing is the same. And yeah, that's a pretty good shape. We need these guys to be a little bit more up in the air. So I'm just going to grab 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm holding down Shift to select multiple anchor points, and that fills the space nicely. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you notice that very rarely on this am I getting everything right perfectly the first time. Most always within Adobe Illustrator, you're going to need to go back and you try it, and then you have to position it exactly right, really, really where you want it. So I think that that shape down there does a nice job of creating a visual language, right? So anytime that there is a thick line, then we have a thinner line that's going through and mirroring it a little bit. And that looks really, really nice to me. So I like the way that that's starting to work with the font. And we'll do a similar treatment up to the top. So let's give it just a little bit more polish here as we start to move around. I might even be able to copy 1 or 2 of these forms and shapes. So this one was pretty cool. Let's see if we can't paste this up at the top. Object, array, transform, reflect. We're going to switch it now. Let's go to horizontal. That's not really going to work for me. Switch it again. Yeah. Okay. And now let's grab that and make it nice and thin. All right. So that's probably a little bit too thin for what it is that we need, but it does fit right over the V very nicely. So I like that portion of it. And we just need to delete some stuff off. So these guys, I like you. She got to go. Same with these, 1 and 2. These guys, 1 and 2 and 3. All right, and these 2. So let's grab this point right here and do something a little bit more interesting with it. All right, that kind of feels nice. There we go. We'll have kind of a longhorn as kind of Texas heart going on there. 1 and 2. There it is, and it's centered. All right, so that is a nice little sharp detail within that section. And I don't want to clutter this thing too much, but I still feel like I can get away with doing a little bit more that starts to actually embellish around the word the pot. So let's do one more, and I want this one to kind of stop right here. Have it go up. And give it just a little bit of a wiggle on the side, like that. Cool, that one looks pretty good. Let's try it thick. Mess with our stroke profile. Pretty nice. Let's make it smaller. Oops. Right, I think that looks pretty good. Control C, Control V. And these choices that I'm making here, deciding on this based on the rules that I'm creating for myself within this design. And the more you look at this stuff, and the more you look at paintings, landscapes, or concept art, you're going to see that the designers are working with a set group of rules. Right, the pot, there it goes. That's working pretty well for me. And now I've got the ability to be able to add just a little bit more embellishment to the center of this if I want to. A little tiny line, and let's keep it nice and clean. So I'm just going to go with a straight line between the two, and let's grab that. Stroke, turn it down. So now that we've established that we've got these hard horizontals within our scene, or within our view, open that up a little bit more. And for this one, I'm going to turn down the stroke. It's nice and thin so that we are matching the same thing with the font. Whew, boy, right? Seems like a lot. Trust me, this style took absolutely forever. These guys, these artists during this period were charging by the hour. They were making their money. Okay, so oops, created a lot of this stuff on the same layer as my font treatment. So right now it's easier for me just to be able to create a new layer. Hide that one. This stuff. Now come with me, and we're going to put it right there. Yeah, so now that's all on its own layer. Cool. Any other stuff? I might end up adding an outline to the overall box once I get to working on these. I also might modify the color and do some other things to make this more interesting. I can do all types of stuff within those black lines within Illustrator, within Photoshop. I think it's going to be a little bit easier and faster for me to be able to do that section of it within Adobe Photoshop. But overall, I think that we've got the title, which is still standing out really nicely. The embellishments are helping to pull our attention in here. The smaller embellishments are fading off, and then this is still the focal point for what it is that I'm looking for. And we've got a really nice look from this bygone era. All right. Pot number 2. I haven't touched the illustration on the pot yet. I'm just doing the embellishments and sort of figuring out the overall look for it. So this one, we want it to feel a little bit more, not grungy, but a little bit more textural with the overall design, but still pretty clean when we look at the final illustration. So for this one, I am going to take my shape, Control C, Control V. Let's grab it and make it black. I'm going to flip it so that it is so it's an outline. And then I can also, I think, mess with the strokes texture in here as well. But for now, let's go in, and I'm just holding down Shift to be able to evenly scale this. All right, and let's give it a nice, clean, modern, just one stroke. Maybe we can do a little bit more with this right around the outside, making sure that my spacing is the same and that I've still got plenty of breathability around this object. So when I actually go in and design this, I'm going to be changing the colors on the text. For finalization, it's not going to stay black text with a gray pot. There's other things that I can do to make this text pop and stand out, and it still does need a little bit more treatment. But right now, this particular line, right, that I've created doesn't relate back to the actual text itself, and I really want that to be able to happen. So we do have some thinner lines, and we've got a little bit of thick and thin that's going on with this. So that tells me maybe I can start to do something like this. So this is sort of looks like a peanut with the form and the strokes outline. Starting to look a little bit more playing card-like, but it does have some modernism to it, which is kind of the thick and thin, and I think that works okay. I still wish that I had a little bit more of a texture on this stroke that's going around the outline, but because it's getting so much more thick and thin, I think that I can increase it a little bit more. And I will, when I start to mess with my coloration, I'm going to drop this back so it doesn't visually stand out as much, but it still feels a little bit related to the text. So we got a little bit of thicker stuff going on there. Okay. So right now it's too visually heavy when I look at it because it's black on this really light sort of greenish yellow, and it's shouting like way too much. So I want this to drop back quite a bit. And now for this one, oh boy, these guys are fun. So whenever we look at this style of super modern illustration, most of the time we're going to lose all embellishments and all strokes and things like that around the outside of any of these objects. So they're not going to have as much pizzazz. It's all about minimalism. It's Scandinavian. It's Swiss design, that type of thing. Sometimes it can rely on smaller spot details, which can look really cool. So let's try and lead with something like that. We've got circles, and let's see if we can't figure out some kind of maybe micro circle pattern that works pretty well on this. So I don't want to go down into the bottom since this guy is already so close. He's creating sort of a bottom border edge himself. And let's grab just a black. All right, give it a stroke, make it larger. And now let's go with some stroke options. I'm going to go with a dashed line. Oh boy, look at that. That gave you all kinds of crazy stuff. I have never used that arrowhead before in my entire life, and I don't think I ever would. Oh gosh, let's get that turned off. None. Thank you. All right. So for the dashes, we've got, they're okay looking. It looks a little bit coupon-y right now. So 6, it's okay. Stroke, dash, let's go to a 3. All right, that's looking a little bit better. Let's open it up again, and we've got the gap. So let's give the gap a 12. So now when we increase that gap, we're starting to get something that looks quite a bit more modern. My numbers are related to one another, so let's go up to 16. See what happens. That's a little bit better. Okay. And then I like that it's creating a smaller dash down there at the end. So we can see with these embellishments, that's nice and subtle. I don't think it's too much. It's not overdoing it on the, and again, I'll drop these back quite a bit so they don't stand out as much, but it's giving me something to be able to move forward with, and it feels related to the circular motif that I'm using here. So I didn't just use a dashed line, I modified it. I edited it a little bit, and those little edits really count. If you just use these things right out of the box, everyone's going to be able to tell that you use them right out of the box, and your design is going to suffer a little bit for it. It's not going to look quite as strong. So there we go. We've got some border outlines here. There's still some more treatments that you're going to see me do with these once we actually get them into Photoshop, especially on the more modern one with the drop shadows and subtle gradients and all that good stuff that we can create in there. But I think I'm in a pretty good spot now to export and get into Photoshop and start working these guys a little bit more. So I'm going to take my dots. Yep. Put those all in the same layer. 1, 2, 3, X. So now I've got for my 3 different styled options, I've got my backgrounds on one layer. I've got my embellishments on one layer. I've got all my pots are on their own layers. And then the fonts should be all on their own layer, except for this guy. We're returning him to where he belongs. So now I can lock out the rest of my layers confidently, grab all this, pull it up. Right. For my pots, now I'm going to lock that, unlock my pots, pull my pots down so that they are on some separate white space, keeping the scale the same. This is also a good way to be able to work if you're going into After Effects, is to prep your files within Illustrator and get as much stuff done as you can. Oh, there's my canvas. That up just a little bit more. There we go. And those little dots, right? I can put them on their own layer, but there's such a high contrast between the black and white, or the black and the color itself, that I don't think I'm going to have any trouble extracting that black once I get into Photoshop. So I'm going to hit Control S on my keyboard just to be able to save. And now I'm going to go to File, Export, and we're going to start working these within Photoshop. All right. The pot styling examples. My resolution, let's go to 150 just to keep these nice and high. We've got a transparent background that's going to get exported. That's going to look good for us. And now we can open these guys up within Adobe Photoshop. All right. Now I am inside of Photoshop, and you can see that I've got my transparent background, which is nice to see. And let's go in, and this is where I actually, well, let's keep it on white, just because we want that clean white space, and I don't want you guys to forget about that at all. From here, I'm going to give myself that same amount of breathing room on the other side and a little bit of breathing room to the top as I start to work these and get them looking good. Ready? And let's just fill in that background color again, white, white. And now I'm just quickly going to separate all 3 of these onto their own little layers. There we go. Now they're back in their positions where they belong. And then I've also got the fonts. I'll probably pull these apart later on. And now they're back where they lived at. So we're inside of Photoshop. Not that big of a transition, not that big of a difference. I'm going to hit Control Shift S to be able to save out here. And the pot styling examples, let's save it out within Photoshop and let's begin. So we said we want to do some stuff now with this pot, and we've got some body text to be able to add in it. But I want to go in and I want to start styling my first pot. So I'm just going to Control X, Control V to bring it out on its own layer. And let's start making some decisions. With that background text that I had on this guy, I can go to Select, Color Range, and we can grab our blacks. Righty. I don't think I got all of it. The line, yeah, it's too thin. It's a little bit dirty, but that's okay. We can continue working forward from there. Control X, Control V. So now I can very quickly start to drop those strokes back. So color overlay, ooh, green, not what I'm looking for. And let's go a little bit darker here. Maybe we give it, yeah, sort of looking like tanned leather at this point. And I'm feeling pretty happy with that. I don't want them to scream too much. I do like the little bit of rough black that's going around the outside there. And let's try with an inner shadow. Let's see what happens. All right, inner shadow, color burn. Let's turn that to normal. Let's turn up the opacity. There we go. So now we're starting to get a little bit of a stroke going on with all these. And let's increase the size and the distance. Okay. Yeah, so now we're creating a little bit of a beveled pattern that's going on the inside of it. It's not quite as strong. It's allowing the text to push forward. And then I've got the text there as well that we haven't done any type of treatment to. So the pot itself, it's Control X, Control V. Oh, look at that. We've got a shadow for it, which is pretty nice. The pot, I'm going to turn that down to like 76%. So that way it is still the darkest thing on this particular element, but it's, how to say it, it's not overpowering the actual graphic that I want people to look at. So from here, I'm going to separate out my pot itself, the background, and I said I might add a stroke to it. So let's just see what that looks like. And we've got this earthy tone here, and let's try the size. All right. Don't want it to be too extreme, just a little bit. That looks pretty good to me. So now I'm in a pretty good spot. I've established that we've got this inner stroke thing that's going on. It's looking quite a bit more polished on the inside. I haven't really added any gradients to it because that's not indicative of this time or this era's design choices. But I think we're in a good spot to be able to start working on the pot itself. So for the pot, I'm going to just go over this guy really quick. This is what we've established to be our darkest color at this point in this piece. And now I'm going to start drawing, finally. um, haven't touched the my pen up until this point in the video. So this is the first time that I'm using it. And what do we see, right? So we've got those thin outlines, we've got the thicker borders going on here, and I think that there's some neat things that we can start to do and create with this pot. Okay, pretty good with that. All right, so remember these little end pieces, these guys that are coming off the edge? I'm going to start to utilize those as I add some line work to this thing. Let's just make some choices. And because everything else is so embellished with our font and with our text, how could the illustration of the pot itself not also be embellished, right? There we go. So that's looking pretty good for me. Now we've got a little bit of a stylized bottom on this guy. So I'm just holding down Shift and using my left mouse to be able to complete that line. Same thing goes for this line going down the side of the pot. Pot is very flat now. It doesn't have any type of interior to it. Oh, greatest line pool of the day right there. And come around the edge. Okay, so that's looking pretty nice. Let's go in and let's give it a top as well. So I'm using my thick and thin strokes from the line work project and creating good line structure on this particular pot. So the illustration style and method that I'm using, there was one example that I showed you guys in the previous video where someone made their project look like it was from a zoology or a plant plant sample from the 1900s, and they did a brilliant job of really modifying their rendering style to be able to look like it's all part of that stuff. Now, within each one of these pots, this is something fun that I wanted to be able to do within this project for you guys, is we can add some more stuff onto the pots. They don't just have to be the pot. We can go in and we can add flames down to the bottom of them, as if you're actually cooking in the pot. You can add steam coming off the top of it. You can have water boiling off the edge if that is what you decide to do. And for this first one, I definitely imagined it as having water, or sorry, flames down at the bottom of the pot itself. So it's definitely going to be cooking something on the inside of it. All right, so that's giving me a little bit more interest on the pot itself. See how many of these we can really kind of get. So now it's got a little bit of hatching that's going on with it. It's not the cleanest hatching in the entire world. I think I could maybe. Oh no, I put all my black lines on the pot itself. That's not what I wanted to do. Darn. Okay, onwards and upwards. Let's keep it moving, folks. So now you can see that my pot matches with the overall shading that I've got going on, or the embellishments around the outside quite a bit better. I can't believe I just did that. And now let's add those flames to the outside of it. So for the flames themselves, again, this is sort of an old-timey render. We want to get a burnt orange so that it's not the super saturated color of flames. And let's go in. I'm on a new layer over the top of it. And what I'm trying to do is make the flames feel like they are a part of that rendering style that we've established before. So all this embellishment work that I did just a moment ago below this, I want the flames to feel like they are part of that same world. Here we go. That one needs to go out just there. And that's correct. All right. That's going to look pretty good once we actually start to fill this sucker in. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Select, modify, expand. You've seen this trick before many times throughout these videos. Go in and just fill in the little tiny sections that I couldn't quite get into the nooks and crannies of. And you guessed it, after this, I'm going to go back and do another pass on my flames to make them look a little bit more closely related to the rendering style that we've already established. That means I need to grab my red, and we've got this brown color here, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper red here, just on the outside. I can always change it to black here in a little bit if I don't like it. And I'm just going to start outlining my lines. Nope, I'm using that thick and thin rule for the good line work. We got the piping that we established on the rendering of the pot here just a moment ago. We've got outlines just about on everything else within this project. On this one so far. There we go. So that looks pretty nice as far as some flames are concerned. And what I want to do next, just go ahead and give them some of that thinner line work that we were seeing just a moment ago. Oh, lag there. These are going to represent the heat coming off of the flames. You can do this a little bit over the top. I don't want to get too much. The inside, just a little bit to show that they're actually moving. And there's some heat going on here. That looks nice. Now, for a secondary detail or a motif within this, go down. That looks good. let's give it this color on the inside so that we're calling this kind of like a tri-color printing. The printing within 3 colors. Printing presses. If you get something mass printed, they want to know exactly what colors you are using and how many different colors you're going to print with. They're going to charge you if you're doing any kind of mass industrial package design for every color that you add to your designs. You just sit here. That's looking pretty good. Now that we've established this secondary color, that is making me want to add highlights to the pot itself, just to be able to give it a little bit of shine. Right. So not overdoing it, just a little bit here and there. And yeah, like I said, let's add a highlight pass just to the pot. And where would that exist at? So I like it right up here at the top. Bam. And now this one across the back. Okay, so that's a nice little bit of detail. We can even add a little bit of a highlight over here on the side and a little bit of the highlight down here just to be able to separate it out just a little bit more. So now the pot is looking like the pot from this particular era, which is exactly what we wanted. Maybe I can add a little bit of steam coming off the top of the pot, and let's see if we can't do something fun with that. Now for the steam, right, we want that feel similar to the forms that we're using throughout the rest of this brand. We're kind of doing an Art Deco type look. Holding down Shift, draw a straight line up at the top so that it has a termination. And let's go in and let's continue with those steam lines so that they're matching, but not overly matching with. And each one gets its sort of secondary line. That's looking pretty good. For the smoke or the steam, maybe there's a little bit more that I want to do on the inside of this. So let's go in and just gonna do a crazy color for a second. That'll work for me. Let's connect those two. I don't want it to be connected to the top of the pot. Grab it, select, modify, expand. You know, they should just have that built into the selection tool by now. Turning on the fuzzy brush and my eraser, fuzzy eraser down. Now let's grab this layer, color overlay. Ooh, that's kind of nice with the orangish red on there. I like that. Let's see if we can't get it looking a little bit better. Let's rasterize the layer. layer style, and now let's turn down the opacity. There we go. All right. We pop. Look at that. So now we've got an illustration that matches with the rest of our font, or the rest of our package that we're creating, that this exists within. And now I would go through and I would create a little bit of body text for this thing. So let's figure that out real fast. I'm going to grab my blackest black. Maybe I can go even blacker here so that the body text reads a little bit clearer since it's going to be small. And create a text box for it. Wow, that's really big text. Let's go with 30. Yeah, still too large. You actually want to be able to write excuse me, a little bit about there it is. Okay. This is the last pot you will ever need to buy. It boils. It broils. That's two B's. It boils, it broils, it cooks, and practically cleans itself. This revolutionary metal deposit is the chef's kiss. Kiss. In every Parisian. Sounds fancy, right? Add. And then ending with a call to action. So let's get a better font. So, oh gosh, I'm so glad that we're getting to talk about this tonight. Please, 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 when you are creating your body text, do not use cursive, for gosh sakes. Do not make it a challenge for the viewer to actually read this stuff. They don't need that. Getting their attention and getting them focused on it is enough. So, using a cursive font is probably not the way to go. All right. I think this is going to be my winner. This is Century. It's a very bankish font, but it's nice and related to the top text that's going on there. It could be a little bit heavier of a weight. It's a little bit thin. And what am I seeing next? You'll notice that I am not centering out my font at all. Please don't turn these in with centered font placements in there. It's just going to be hard to read, and it's going to hurt the viewer's eyes to look at. Now, maybe there's some other options or some other things that I can do to make this text even more readable and still fit within my my motif that I've created. So that's kind of always what I'm looking at here, right? If you notice anything throughout this entire process, right, it's very iterative. As I introduce one new ingredient to the design, then I'm going back and I'm changing and I'm editing and I'm modifying some things a little bit to be able to hold it all together and actually make it work. My pot is not entirely centered within this design. I've still got some funky negative space going on the right-hand side, but we'll see if we can't balance that with something else over here on this left-hand side, just so that they're a little bit more even and we're keeping that breathing space the same. But real fast, I want to go through and let's create a shape. Now, you'll notice that I am not creating these shapes going on both sides, right? So I'm only creating half my shape because the likelihood of me being able to uh, get this to match and to get my points in the same spot each time, not very likely. So Control C, Control Shift V, edit, transform, flip horizontal. Come on now. Yeah, we got something selected. There we go. All right, and Control E. Now, what's happened next? I've created a border around the text, but my text is a little bit cramped now, so it doesn't feel quite as clean in there as it should. I'm trying to just trying to space these just a little bit better. I think that feels stronger. Okay. And now I need to go back and adjust my text so that it has a little bit more breathing room on the inside. One of the other fun things that you can do if you're working within this particular style is to take one of the letters and we can bump it up, go 24. There we go. Now it feels like a medieval manuscript. And get that nice and centered. Okay, so that looks pretty good. But last thing I want to do is go to, and let's add a stroke. It's a little bit thick. Let's go to 2. That looks good. And inner glow. Nope, inner shadow. There's the inner shadow, but that's still a little bit strong. So I'm going to drop my opacity down a lot on it so that's hardly even visible there. Okay. So now within this illustration, I've got the pot itself, the illustration of the pot, the text up at the top, which is still standing out. I've got the body text that I'm calling out in here and making it look really nice. I don't have a subheader, which I haven't created for this one, but there's probably some other little advertising embellishment that I can create within this. So let me open up the Googles. Okay. What's it? 1800s advertisement. Oh yeah. And look at all these things, right? If this is the route that you decide to go, there are so many neat shapes and whimsical little things that they used to create back in the day for all these prints and this handset type. Okay, this is about gunpowder. That doesn't really matter to me. What I'm really looking for here is one of these symbols. Oh man, I really like the old-timey smudge marks and the yellowing that's going on with this. So I'll likely create something like that going over the top of this. Now, let's go in and let's grab this mark. You can see all the little flares that they're creating too and all those pieces of penmanship. I think that's a little bit overdone within this one, but that's what I wanted there. And now let's get, oh, come on, man. Sure, I just moved something. Yeah. You come back where you were. Get it nice and centered in the right spot. And now this guy, there he is. So like I said, we're going to try to balance out some of that negative space that's down on the bottom. Put him over the top. Flames and everything else we created. Smoke also. There he goes. All right, and let's mess with the layer interpretation. Okay, that's working pretty well. Last thing I want to do is let's go into old paper texture. Cool, there we go. What's a good one? That one's got quite a bit of stain and roughness to it and discoloration. I like that one a lot. Let's go with that. It's also got the watermarks on there. Looks good to me. And so now I'm going to grab my pot, V, just about the right scale that I needed it at. And now I'm going to mess with my layer interpretation for this so that we're not losing too much. And I really want this all the way over all the stuff that I've created. Ooh, look how that's starting to uniform everything here. So I want it to be really subtle. This is way too much. Dropping back my colors an awful lot. All right, that's giving me a little bit, but I want to turn this down a lot, a great deal. And let's put the body text over the top so that it's still nice and clean. Yeah, and can't really see it now. There we go. That's a little bit stronger. I like feel like I'm losing quite a bit of the illustration here. So let's go in and I'm going to purge all of that. Grab that layer. Where are my flames? All right. There we go. That's more like it. And let's cut this. There it goes. That looks nice. And now I can drop it back a lot, but 0%, maybe just a little bit more, or change the layer interpretation. I don't lose the coloring too much. There we go. Hard mix. I think that's the one, just to give it a little bit of yellow. It looks like when I turn it off, still like it better. Bring this up all the way and see what we can really get just on the illustration. Oh, I think that's the one right there. So soft light. I lost some of the saturation within the reds, so still got my fuzzy brush selected from earlier. Let's turn it off around there. And we're just sort of eliminating it just a little bit so it blends in a little bit better. And now we've got a pretty good looking, stylized, finalized, well-treated first one within this project. Looks nice. The next one should go a little bit faster. So let's move on over to the next one and start doing some fun stuff with this. For this one, now might be a good time to pause the video, take a quick break, and then we'll divide the second one up into a part two for you guys to come back and check out, just to be able to see, which one it is that you like the best. So thanks for sticking around and watching the first version of the pot text treatment. You can see there's a lot of steps that I went through to be able to get this final graphic treatment that's happening, but it is cohesive and it's all brought together. We're going to try and do the same thing where we bring in the roughness of this font up here at the top into the overall design while still making it look nice and polished and finished. And then we've got this super modern, clean one down here at the very end. We should be able to knock maybe both of those out in the next video. So yeah, let me do a quick pause and I'll catch you guys in just a little bit.